The first speaker today is going to be Ben Dobbin. Ben is a University of Edinburgh graduate. He joined Foster and Partners in 1999. Since then, he's been promoted to senior partner as they're part of their California office, and his portfolio spans a diverse range of projects, including the Folkestone Harbor Master Plan, Amsterdam's Vivaldi Tower, and he played a pivotal role in the design of Apple Park from start to finish. So with a robust track record in North America, particularly, Ben's leadership in guiding architects and engineers is well established, and he's going to be presenting on the redevelopment of the iconic Transamerica Pyramid Center, which gives a new lease on life to one of the most recognizable landmarks and the second tallest building in San Francisco. Right after Ben presents, we're going to hear from Kirsten Ring-Murray as the principal and owner of Olson Kundig. Kirsten leads projects such as multifamily developments, cultural institutions, and urban revitalization initiatives, all guided by design principles that prioritize user experience. Through adaptive reuse projects, Kirsten preserves the history of existing buildings with layered experiences by adapting them for public use and residential living while strengthening connections within the urban fabric. And she's going to be presenting about the creative transformation of 8899 Beverly Boulevard, a mid-century office building remade by the firm into a stunning 48-unit residential complex. And then finally, we're going to hear from Jean Sandoval from ZGF Architects. I realized I said the Canadian ZGF earlier. So ZGF Architects, and you might say that design partner Jean has an active imagination. From growing up around a family shipbuilding business to finding early inspiration in sci-fi, the creative spirit was installed in him from an early age. Jean is grateful and proud to have his roots in Asia, where he nurtured a penchant for unconventional thinking and resourcefulness, which he leverages today for designs that creatively balance human and environmental performance. Jean leads design teams for some of the firm's most complex and ambitious projects, including an expansion at the Nike World Headquarters campus and doubling the capacity of the beloved Portland International Airport, an instantly recognizable design, which he's going to be presenting here today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over the mic to Ben, and we're going to get started.
Thanks, Hannah. So today I'd like to talk to you about the Transamerica Pyramid. Maybe a lot of you don't know, but this is actually a photograph from my office, literally where my desk is. And there you can see Transamerica Pyramid just on the horizon. And it really sort of is so impactful within the city of San Francisco, especially on the skyline. It's a symbol of the city. And of course, it's even in the iconic Lego set. And this is an earlier iteration, and it shows the president of Transamerica back in the late 60s, early 70s, with the architect, William Pereira. Now, William Pereira was a great architect of his time, and I don't necessarily have enough time, even in this meeting, in this presentation, to go through all the work which he did, but he's a legend from the University of San Diego, the University of Irvine, a great master planner, and a great architect. And a lot of this building, people know about this icon on the skyline, but a lot of people didn't really know what this building was about, where it met the ground. And what was a great opportunity for us when we were called in to work on this project was it wasn't just about a building. It was actually about an entire site, an entire city block, and how you transform that city block at a very critical time during COVID, reimagining how you could resolve the relationship of the buildings and the city fabric, and seeing it as maybe a test case for what can be done at a greater scale within the city. And so for us, everything was about taking it apart, really examining how the parts relate to each other, what's been added which isn't required, what has been added over time, like accretions which weren't really in keeping with the original vision, throwing away some of those parts through the evaluation process, and then seeing what is the richest part of it. And for us, the Redwood Park, which sits actually almost at the back garden of the Transamerica Pyramid, is actually the centerpiece between these three different major buildings which sit on the site. And for those of you who don't know, the Redwood Park is a great refuge within the city. And that was really our starting point, is like, can you take the spirit of the Redwood Park and spread green and unite the site in a carpet of green and planting and biophilia to mend around the edges of the city. This photograph is really brilliant because it shows in 1973 planting those redwood trees, which were only about 15 feet, 5 meters tall at the time. And they've grown to 60 feet, 20, 30 meters tall. And we sort of consider those really a gift from history. So when we talk about how we work with existing buildings, they are a gift. Someone actually, an architect, a great thinker, a landscape architect, had a vision, and something like a tree which grows then over 50 years to become something really iconic, something you couldn't even buy today if you wanted to do it today. And so that's back in the 1970s. You see those tiny little redwood trees, which have been grown in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And then what they grew to today. And there's a lot of features here which are original, the kind of pixelated edge to the water pond, not the frogs which are dancing within it, not the stage which is over here, which removed a number of sort of fruit trees from the park. And so for us, it was like, how could we actually mend this? You know, the ramp over here was not original. And so we went back to even the landscape architect's drawings. And there we found, for instance, there's a row of trees. If you see that horizontal lane, which is Mark Twain Alley, Mark Twain Lane, there's a row of fruiting sort of trees which were coming down there. And so there were a lot of clues when we went back to the original drawings, which told us about how we could actually bring the building forward in the future. And so the vision here starts to unify green around the site. We're planting those fruiting trees all the way along Mark Twain Alley, and we're seeing the Central Park as a uniting feature between all the different parts of the building, the master plan. And so this is Mark Twain as we found it. It was really the back door. It was where the rubbish was put out, although pedestrianized. And this is what it's become. And we've got the planted trees on either side. It's actually becoming a destination, a place where you want to sit and eat and sit outside within the city. And a site which was a park which was walled in, we removed those walls, and what it is today actually expands the feeling of the park. So the park actually doubles in size by building out these sort of open seating areas which are fully open to the public during the day. So the building itself is really defined by, at the base of the building, by this amazing colonnade structure, like a cathedral, a real triumph of a brutalist architecture. And the actual entry of the building is buried deep inside it. But there was kind of a problem when we encountered the building, in that this zone, which is under the colonnade, and the plaza which surrounds it, didn't really feel like it belonged to anyone. And so our major move was to actually expand the sense of the building using the space around it. And of course, expanding the green. So we planted trees throughout this colonnade and actually sort of made it feel more natural. And we broke down the facade, which was around the base of the building, opening it up to a pure, clear glass facade with a minimum number of structural elements. So really dissolve the boundary between inside and outside. And then we brought the seating outside as well. And this is seating which members of the public can also use and come here. So we're actually sort of giving, the building starts to gift out to its environment. Crucially, the building, when we encountered it, had two lobbies which were separated by this core, which is highlighted in orange. And that sort of comes from an early days where there was a banking floor at the base of the building, and there was a corporate tenant taking the ownership of the whole tower. But this plan moving forward was to create one unified vision. And so we were able to reroute the escape stairs and a lot of MEP and create one unified lobby together. And that gives something back, again, something of the sense of arrival, something for the people who are using it, and create spaces where people can also meet clients before and after meetings. And what was a very closed environment, and you can see half of this facade is actually opaque, we could actually transform it and make it more open. And with that came raising the ceiling on the inside removing several feet of ductwork, going to a radiant slab with a minimum fresh air approach. And so then the structure of the colonnade could run through horizontally and again dissolve that boundary between inside and outside. And this was looking in one of the lobbies back in 2020. And this is the lobby today, taking those walls away, rerouting the staircase behind the reception desk. And this cross bracing, which you see, is actually a relic of the building. This is the horizontal framing plan at that colonnade level, and that diagonal bracing structure continues onto the inside. And so we use that plus the kind of innovations of seismic design, which were incorporated into the original design, this cross bracing, which featured in Welding Design and Fabrication Weekly. This is something we then brought out of the concrete, and we exposed it, and we made it a feature, which then becomes the sense of arrival at the building. It's a kind of a portal, which was originally like within the building. So we uncovered things which were great strengths of the building, then made them features which actually become expressions of the building's architecture. And we had to be very careful then in how we followed through the detailing of the external architecture into the internal architecture. The concept we were carrying forward is to work in balance and in collaboration with William Pereira. And so we sort of really studied the detailing of the precast framing around all of the different structural elements, and we carried that forward faithfully. And then the challenge there then was to match the concrete material, which had been aging for 50 years on the outside of the building, and how to transform and bring that into the building. And we worked with the same fabrication company who'd made the precast panels back in the 1970s. We did have to go through about 50 samples, though, to get the right kind of color match, but that was an effort which was well worth it for the result, which you see here, where it becomes almost seamless as to where the historic starts and the new begins. And in this case, I think that is entirely the right thing to do, because we're trying to create that experience of bringing people into the lobby and breaking down the boundary between public and private. So that was really a transformation at the ground floor, which was at larger level at the master plan level. And then we made a few further interactions higher up the building. So level 27 is the transfer level from the lower elevator bank to go into the high-rise elevator bank. And so that becomes an interactive level, a lounge level between different people who work inside the building, and you can bring tenants there. The level below that is a gym and wellness, because that's also just off that sky lobby level. So it's easy to get to for all the tenants of the building. And then there's a marketing suite, which I won't dwell on today. And then at the top, we transformed what was formerly the boardroom for Transamerica into a sky bar. So this then becomes the gym level. So transforming that experience using a lot of reflective glass to bring light from the outside into the depth of the plan, and create one long zone along the edge where we broke down a lot of the smaller containment of areas to create one big space which would unite. So you can be on your running machine, and then you have an amazing view across the whole of the San Francisco Bay. And then moving up to the sky level, you can see here, then you're on the same level as Telegraph Hill and the Coit Tower, which is another great icon of the city. And you're looking across the North Bay to, for those who know San Francisco, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see Alcatraz from here, Angel Island, Oakland. You can see all the ships moving backwards and forwards to China. It is an incredible space. And this is our Sky Lounge, and it unites. Everyone can come to this space. It's a place to meet clients. It becomes almost a center of culture. And then there's even a sculpture which Norman created within the boardrooms at this level. And that, I think, is a really strong link to the clouds, which somehow spread within the city of San Francisco. And then the last floor becomes a bar and cocktail and event space at the very top floor with amazing views across San Francisco. It's a place which, again, becomes a community for the tower. People come together here for happy hour. You can bring clients here. You can rent it out. So this amenitized office is really a future bringing this landmark forward into the future and really thinking about how it lives on into the next 50 years of its life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. There's so many more details to dive into.
Yes.
I'm going to pass it over to Kirsten, and I hope that we get back and have some more questions. It's amazing to go from the landscape all the way up to the ceiling details.
Thanks. That was great. I can't wait to visit that building the next time I'm in town. I think there were some similar issues we had an opportunity to deal with at a different scale. So this project with the adaptive reuse of the 8899 Beverly Boulevard project, which is in West Hollywood, we had an opportunity to, again, play with new contemporary edits to a mid-century modern building as we transformed it, an office building and mixed-use office building into one that was primarily mixed-use residential development. What you see here in the image, you can see you're in West Hollywood. The tower is rather evident. Also in front of the tower, you see a row of townhomes, which were part of the project and a key to the, I think, development success of the project as well. You're looking at the north facade, which then looks onto the Hollywood Hills and is where a lot of our new alterations and also some of our floor plans.
Kirsten, we've got you muted. One sec.
There. Was I? Okay. Now. Okay, thanks. So we had to integrate in a similar way contemporary engineering and architectural interventions. This was a very substantial conversion, and it includes 40 residential units, 12 affordable apartments, and 15 actually affordable apartments, and 8 townhomes. From a development perspective, the non-conforming high-rise use that existed in the middle of West Hollywood, which you can see is a very low-scale development, it really presented an opportunity for the developer to introduce a project that had true high-rise density and in an area which is a uniquely pedestrian-oriented place within Los Angeles, even before the development. Let's see. The building itself was originally designed by Richard Dorman in 1964 as the Los Angeles International Design Center. The building was primarily an office building, and it did have various retail uses on the street. It's surrounded by lower level density, primarily housing behind to the north, and then a corridor that had a lot of different design related retailers. And at the time we started the project, actually this project goes back to a 2012 job number in our office, and it was about a 10-year design project. We had a lot of collaborators both within and outside the office, notably my partner Tom Kundig, who was quite taken with some of the features of the existing building, and our many in-house collaborators. So you can see here, this is a little bit of a before and after. And I think at the time, this was not a historic building at all, not a historically designated building. I think it's a building that maybe only an architect can love, or a design geek, so to speak. And it had become, I think, had really a lower level of use. Most of the upstairs office spaces were vacant. It had become rather run down, but of course its value was in the embodied energy within the concrete structure. That's primarily what this building was. And some of the aspects, we thought it was really important to preserve some of the aspects and celebrate them within the facade, including these really distinctive balconies, which we did a subtle edit to make code compliant for today's uses. And then this concrete megastructure, which, as you can see in the larger elevation, we actually contrasted with a distinct black tone so that it was legible in red as an element within the old, within the original composition of the project. So the project really used the transfer of development rights along that townhouse corridor to basically be able to not only convert this use, but add some to expand it in 3 directions to the east, west, and north. So you can see, I think, in this juxtaposition of the old and new, that where we did this more glazed light expansion, which was really necessary as it was going from an office to a residential use. We wanted to create indoor-outdoor living experiences. We also wanted to have a lighter and more transparent aspect to the mass. Obviously, you have a juxtaposition of a high-rise scale to a very low-rise context and community. This is a building that would not have been allowed or welcomed in the community probably as a new construction. But we also wanted to be sensitive. People had just come to accept the building as an element in the landscape. We were expanding it. We wanted to make sure that that expansion had a delicacy, had a lightness, had a transparency that did help mitigate that scale. Another goal that you can see at the street level, there was basically a split level condition at the sidewalk, which was providing many of the accesses to the stores and this ramp. We pulled out the glazing to be able to really bring pedestrian access directly to the grade, and within the stores, the designs could navigate that change in grade. A lot of our amenities went into some of these elements in the podium. We also introduced a vertical glazed element to really mark the point of residential entry into the project, which we felt gave it a sense of hierarchy and a legibility of function that we needed as this within this conversion. Here are a couple of plans. To the left is the ground level, which shows our entry condition and how it basically breaks into retail units. To the left, you'll see our parking entry, and up and to the right, you'll see there was just a variety of different residential scales, from studios to 2 and 3 bedroom units and everything in between, including a floor of affordable units, rental units that had 2 bedrooms. In section, now this is, I think, one of the things, and actually when the project came to us, I think we were surprised by the ambition of the project. It was somewhat humble commercial building, and one of the ambitions of the project was to replace an elevated parking structure that wrapped the base of the building, be able to change the uses, really fulfill interior uses into that space, but also excavate underneath the entire townhouse portion of the block. And also we did have to do a lot of excavation under the building structurally. So that allowed us to put all of the parking that had been existing in above grade structured parking below grade, which was significant. Also to the right of this image, you'll see a few things in this section. I think one of the things that was beneficial, and this was really before there was as much dialogue about that office I think it's been sort of a COVID era goal, is to think about what to do with underused office buildings in the residential conversion. This was a little bit before I think that dialogue was at a high pitch, as high of a pitch. But one of the challenges is dealing with the integrating of systems, particularly plumbing systems, which are much different in a residential building. But we did have good 12.5 foot clear heights to be able to work with. So we were able to accommodate, I think, and weave through a lot of those systems and make it a viable project from a development perspective. Again, we have another shot, as we did see with the Transamerica Tower. The below grade construction, I think, was fascinating. We did have to reinforce and bring the building up to contemporary seismic performance. And we introduced basically not only the excavation allowed us to put this below grade parking, but also we have about 4 foot deep mass slab to to meet some seismic requirements. So that was all done with the building in place, the structure of the building in place. We did there was a lot of carbon fiber wrapping of particularly sensitive, connections between the concrete column and the waffle slab structure. In this parking, again, we're in Los Angeles. Parking is important, and in fact, we had a parking requirement, and we wanted to actually elevate the experience of the parking. This is one of the areas that does have a valet condition, so we're pulling that loading and unloading into restaurants and some of the retail. We have an opportunity to pull that inside and really treat it as an elevated space, in addition to some private garages. And to the left is our parking ramp. We really wanted to create a generous ramp so that we were, minimizing, car impacts on Beverly Boulevard. But again, just embracing the experience that the car really is part of life. And it was important to the community that we were mindful about remembering that aspect of the development. See, okay. Again, this features, this shows a little bit about the entry process. This addition of the vertical bay, which is an element that's interesting in various of the different floor plates, but we really wanted to bring a front door to the residential users in particular and mark an entry point with a resident, and then we wove various uses. I mean, within these projects, I think similarly to the previous project, being able to weave new uses into a rather, relentless structural grid and a very deliberate, need for vertical circulation. Within that, we look for opportunities to make two-story spaces. This is the entry lobby. And I think one of the important aspects of the project was the ability to then take advantage, while only being 10 or 11 stories tall, which in many cities is negligible mid-rise elevation. When you're in the center of West Hollywood, it's quite stunning and striking. So some of the upper story units really, we were able to, in adding the three-sided floor plate expansion, we could create we could offset columns, so we could have a very light glazed condition. These are some Victrosa sliding wall panels, which again were very ambitious, but we really were able to detach these window walls from the new column grid to create some particularly stunning conditions. And I think this was an aspect where the owner was very focused on providing that value. We tried to create indoor-outdoor extensions of materials. This is typical, and I think a lot of our residential work in the area, again, really trying to take advantage of that perfect climate to create indoor-outdoor living opportunities. And some more of those. And our expansion, even though I think in order to make the project financially viable, we were very opportunistic in areas we were able to create livable space. This was actually the mechanical penthouse that became one of the primary penthouses, and we were able to, by introduction of new and more space constrained strategies for mechanical systems, we were actually able to reclaim space that had been primarily used on the roof just for mechanical purposes. So, and again, this is the transfer of development rights was an important portion of this. So on the Beverly side, this is a plan that shows, I think on the left, you see one of the elevations. We did 8 townhomes plus a shared pool amenity. And this is where this was a very detailed community design process. I think every neighbor was met many, many times over the years. There was a lot of public debate and conversation about this. And really, I think where the community's voice was really heard in wanting to create this residential scale transition with these townhouses between the townhouse and the tower, which that area had been surface parking before. So this actually greatly improved the relationship to this high-rise project. It was very important to them that each of the townhomes was unique and individually designed. So we explored a range of concepts and really leaned into different material expressions. And as you can see, there's really makes a more gentle transition in scale from one to the other. And, oops. Okay, a little bit of the interior, and then working with really compact spaces, we're able to create a series of spaces that really mitigate public to private conditions between the tower, the townhomes and the surrounding single-family neighborhood. To the right are some little pocket courtyard, backyard spaces and terraces that we created to really weave these different scaled elements together into hopefully what is a fairly nuanced composition of public and private spaces. And finally, our shared pool amenity. On the left, again, you can see the feature of the lightness of the new expanded floor plate area, and then the maintenance of this mass and scale and expression of the tower itself. And that is I.
Thank you so much, Kristen. We have seen all of the beautiful images of this, and I think getting the background on the construction details, all of the thought that had to go into updating it for seismic activity and the kind of guts of the building part of it is also very mind-blowing. I'm looking forward to discussing more. But next up, we're going to invite Jean. So take it away, Jean.
Hi. Thanks for having me. And I do think that this has been the past two projects shown is truly focused on structure and creating beauty. And many of this renovation and retrofit are really tied there. And I love to have this title. It's really timely because I wanted to bring it together. In this project that we did for the Portland International Airport, there is such a pessimism about transportation and the way it is and the way they behave, because more often than not, they're treated as utilities and they don't have the romance. So this was the very first slide I put for the team, and I said, let's go back to the early 1900s when transportation was really a romantic centers of cities. We're about 80% done. The image you've seen is we're going to get done in 5 months. It's been a 60-year journey. Unlike Kristen and Ben, we actually been involved in this building for many years. And it's become America's best airport for about 10 years before the remodel. And it was not because it was significant architecture, because it was very comfortable and quaint and such, being what it is. So that was the biggest thing, is this paradigm between, oh my gosh, it's a small airport, but we're going to grow from 19 million, 35 million. This is kind of the mind frame that we had to break through and bring together. Then the combination, how are we going to create something old and having something new, or could we build it together? So just to sort of like give us an orientation, this is an H design configuration airport. What we wanted to do was build over the existing terminal, which is the number 3, from to double its size. There was a lot of conversation of where it needs to go, but we ended up going to its configuration number 3 because it saved a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure. There was a really high carbon goal that was going to be hit, and it's really been driven because a lot of airlines signed to get net zero carbon by 2050, and they're struggling because the fuel development and engine are not there. So what we wanted to do was like, what if we can lower your carbon footprint on the ground, and it would help with the overall performance of everything else you do that we cannot control because that's architects. Here again, the building, this is the terminal. It's 11 different buildings that part of it was mine and part of it was my older partners that we worked together. And the whole idea is, how do you stitch it together into one whole new one, even though you're growing the capacity to double the size. Our thinking was, what if we built a roof over it to keep us dry and find a way to keep it safe? And there's been such a strong language. This is the most beloved roof in Portland. It rains a lot here. It allowed sort of the welcoming of passengers who arrive and a departure, and became an iconographic memory of a lot of people. What we wanted to do was, what if we get inspiration for that big roof and created 2 other more, so you could get a set of 3. And the same time, we're going to see here, is that we're going to keep the baggage claim operational along the way. Now, we had a really daunting task. If you work in the airport, there's hardly any time to work in it because the runway is down a very short period of time. You cannot use crane. And so we had to be really creative in the construction side of things. So what we thought, we're like, what if we do everything prefab? We thought, what can we do? A prefab yard about a quarter mile away from the terminal in the runway, and then use a steel mill about 9 miles away in the river doing our columns. Those are all 70-foot columns. So here's the picture. The prefab yard, we're able to put 18 of those modules along the way. And then we would unzip this module in 100-foot bays and slip it in place within a 4-hour window to cross the runway in that one evening. And then as they cross the runway, we would slide them in place along the edges of the runway to complete this 18-module roof. But there was a lot of discussion of how can you do a 9-acre roof using wood. And then we said, like, no, why don't we think of combining it together and using the material for whatever they're best at? Of course, it came natural. The firm we have, like Kristen, we're in the Northwest, wood is so natural. We've been doing wood for over the life of the firm. And before it was called mass timber, it was just wood. It's what we do. So that practice, it became natural. And then for me, where I grew up, it was also the notion that why don't you build within a place with the material and the skill that's available? That's been going around. It's a vernacular architecture that a lot of the world has embraced or evolved over time. So going back to that notion, Oregon is about timber and Portland is about cutting timber. So it came natural. But during the World War II, Oregon became a steel place because we built a lot of those Liberty ships. So those are the 2 strong industry that's embedded within the city. Then there is just a natural thing. We want to think about what is the embodied carbon. Doing a remodel, of course, helps a lot. Using wood helped a great deal. But we had this idea: why can't we harvest sustainable farm wood within our region? And what it did is it lowered the carbon footprint another 35%. So we're building the roof and the systems with an 81% reduction in carbon right away. So what happened was, it was like sort of a graceful union between wood and steel, with all the sizing and that dimension really tied to what we can transport to highways and trains and whatever. So it became a modular sense, a modular way of doing things. This went all the way to the very end. We thought that modularization would allow us to have a broader labor pool, but also allowed small companies to partake in one of the biggest economic, driver in the state and biggest building that ever built in the state. This has never been done before. So we had to break into the paradigm of how people think and how they draw. When people think of digital and analog, there is this notion that when you design, you use parametric. And when you do construction, being analog, we reverse this thinking. So as architects, we designed like carpenters, and the contractor, we wanted them to design like use the computer in terms of the way they construct things. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In using analog, we were able to rediscover the properties of wood that is really strong in bending, that is really malleable, that it comes in different sizes that you can use. And using real like half-inch scale models, we were able to design this building in a very sensible way so it could be supplied within our region. And we want to take advantage of what's available. And these are all the things available within a 300-mile radius in the system. This was happening during pandemic, the whole construction and design of this building. in using these materials, we were able to facilitate the most efficient building system. We only had 2 people working in each bay assembling the rafters because they're only 10 feet wide, and we measured all the dimension and the weight. So we save in labor. In this prefab yard, we lowered the construction height, so we save in insurance. We didn't have to put money in scaffolding. So there were so many things in the construction that allowed us to put the money back into architecture. Then the contractors use CNC machines and parametric modeling. So all those pieces, like you're gonna see in this drawing, in this image, there's a grid on the floor. Each piece of those wood pieces are coded, and they're settled within that grid, so the installer could come in one place and look up and install it directly. It saved a lot of time. But we went to the analog, to the physical model to investigate light. You're going to see on the right, it's fascinating what those yellow different shapes, they are the same sizes in square foot, had a very different sort of shadow, experience within them. So physical model became a way of rediscovering the beauty of light. And up above, you're going to see a photograph of the model, and down below, it shows you the real constructed spaces. What's amazing about physical model is that you can't really cheat, and it really is the way the physical world behaves. But we use parametric modeling to make sure that we can truly measure where all these lights were coming and position the right shape, the size, and the right positioning to get 60% daylighting into the whole building. What I'm saying here, that efficiency and metrics and romance can tie together. And if you do it right, it could be truly magical. As we think about a building that is 60% daylit, this building has 100% vision glass. That is significant in a city when the code says you can only do 44. But because the way we designed it, the way we use the natural environment, we harvested a lot of daylight for heating and lighting. This building grew twice the size, but what's amazing to it is how comfortable this place is. A lot of the workers truly enjoy being here because of the experience and the sensuality. It's beloved because the regional material can express who we are, but it's beloved because it's really we use our natural resources within the 300-mile radius. It's very, very efficient. We almost were able to be net zero if we were able to have solar panels on site. But it's pretty amazing because as we talk about net zero, it's truly a very sensual building. It just makes you feel you want to be there. It's become sort of the center of the city, and it's in terms of it's beloved. But the most important thing is that we were able to keep a third of the construction costs and give it to new businesses that are thriving. So we created a lot of new industry and economic driver. And most importantly, it was inexpensive. The whole roof installed, all 9 acres, was only 3.1% of the project cost. Why is that important? If you go to any other airport, all the money is on the roof. So this roof is beautiful. It has all the acoustics and all the performance that tie to it. But we had money to bring the sensuality and the architecture to the walls that people touch, to the furniture, to the little things that makes it almost feel like you're at home. So in the day of, when you measure success or how people love it, it's become sort of an Instagrammable space, and people are getting engaged in it. So I think we sort of like kind of succeeded, and hopefully it becomes embraced more when we tie the natural environment in the forests to what it is as a building. And combining this idea that harmony and delight, whether it's old or new, can come together. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was such a clearly laid out, beautiful explanation of a really complicated project. Yeah, it's so incredible how many different things that this project can touch, like emanating from one space throughout the entire state. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, so thank you all. Thank you so much, Jean. And also thank you to Ben and Kirsten. I think that it's amazing having all of these projects in dialogue. I also need to do a West Coast trip to now come and see these. So we have about 10 minutes left for a Q&A. Just before we get started, I want to thank everyone for joining us and remind everyone that these are all A+Award-winning projects. They all won top votes from the public and our jury alike in the past season. And just to remind everyone that our current A+ season is open for entries, and that we'll be sending a discount code to everyone who attended this talk for you to participate as well. We have the final entry deadline is this Friday at midnight. So I recommend putting an entry together before this Friday. And yeah, so on to the Q&A. I think that what stands out to me about these projects is all the way that you kind of, and someone else asked a similar question, all of these projects, you kind of take the existing space as a, rather than a constraint, as a jumping off point for kind of like the way that you thought creatively for each of the designs. And I kind of wanted to ask each one of you, first of all, if there was ever a moment in these projects where like demolition or any part of demolition was considered. This is what one of our attendees is asking. And then second, how your firms are kind of looking at these types of projects. If you're bringing to clients that you want to preserve structures that are existing on sites, or if you're seeking out kind of more adaptive reuse, or just how you're noticing your relationship with design and existing buildings changing as you get new commissions in recent years. So maybe we can go in the order that the presentations went, and we'll start with Ben. I know it's a multi-pronged question, so answer which most resonates with you.
I think on the question of demolition and how, I think as the overall asset, it was clear that we're not demolishing the Transamerica Pyramid, but I think we wanted to do a value judgment on what was original, what was part of the original vision, what was contributing to the vision, and what was detracting from the vision, and make a sort of value-based judgment on what we could change, and then if we made further changes, how that could actually enhance the vision. So all the things which we took out were things which were back of house type spaces, and everything was towards the enhancement of a vision or a connection between inside and outside. And so all those things were not taken lightly. We even, we discussed them with the city's Department of Historic Preservation as well at every step. So everything was based on an analysis. I think that's very important to mention. And then in terms of how does the climate of architecture is responding, and there's a lot more adaptive reuse projects coming in. And I only talked about just the pyramid itself, but one of the corner buildings that we're developing as part of the Transamerica Pyramid site is an adaptive reuse that adds area to it. Here in London, we're being asked to go back into some of the buildings that we designed as well and bring them forward. And so it's all about managing the asset first and giving it that next lease of life. And there's a building which I started on, which I'm quite excited about, how we can actually go back to it, enhance a lot of the building systems, and take it forward for the next 25 years to 50 years of client use. So people really start to think about what is the future of this building. There's no reason why the pyramid can't go for another 100 years, and many buildings. And that's how we have to think.
Yeah, it really strikes me that the building systems thinking for it doesn't translate as well the way that we kind of consume architecture online, but it's like crazy important to all of these projects. And so I think that it needs to be more part of the story that we're telling about them, because clearly that's informing a lot of these other decisions. I also think it's incredible that clients are coming back to you, and also obviously Jean was talking about having all of these stories, like to give like architects and firms the chance to return to designs is pretty incredible actually, and I hope that keeps expanding. Kirsten, if you need a reminder of kind of there was a lot of questions that I asked at once.
I'll start by saying I don't think at any point there was a consideration of demolishing this building. Again, one of its big values was its non-conforming use with height, which just enabled the entire building to be to happen, to even have a conversation about it. But I would, and I thought to myself various times over the years, it's like, because you're finding a loophole, right? To some extent, you have to consider that you're taking advantage of a situation. However, I really do think that it did save, regardless of how much work we had to do to the building, I do think it did. It was rational. I think both economically and from the perspective of sustainability, it was rational to save the structure of that building and to have it be the framework that the whole project was rooted around. And I think it gave it a character and a layering with history that it wouldn't have been, I don't think it would have been nearly as interesting of a building without that element and that story. And I think to our work, we are very interested in adaptive reuse and building transformations. I think predating this, we had a lot of we have some wonderful old building stock in the Northwest that we had opportunities to work within. That's always a really interesting project type for us. But I think also subsequent to this, I think we've had more opportunities to, people are very interested in our ability to do that. We've been doing more building repositionings, converting things, taking perhaps old office buildings and really changing the way they meet the ground and their sort of public-private uses, et cetera. So it's been very interesting to us. And I see a whole lot more of it. We had a chance in recent years to renovate the Space Needle, which is another very interesting project for another day. So it's something that we really find interesting in that conversation. I think the sense of that you're designing with the previous designers, whether they're still living or not. I think as Ben, you talked about that history. There's also something I think kind of interesting in that dialogue, that discovery, unlocking what might have been the key thoughts and thinking about how you interact with that, how you're in dialogue with that. It's just a really interesting design exercise, I believe.
It's like a nice collegiality as well. I think, I don't know, I feel like it's easy to get kind of siloed into the type of design that you're doing or your team is
Absolutely.
doing, and to kind of have that exercise to take you outside of routine ways of thinking, or for me anyways, that's really productive. Thank you. And so I'm going to pass the mic to Jean to respond to this one as well.
I'm going to add to this because one is, as architects, most of our clients are in the financial side. So that's why it was really important for us to embrace numbers in doing the airport, and this from the Portland airport, but through all the airports could be renovated in America or in the world. They can't really move because there's a lot of infrastructure tied to it. The first thing that we did was use the tool that the client measure us with, the financial people, is that use the metric. We told them that if you move a terminal, it's not only about the terminal, it's also the parking, the CUP, and the transit that gets you into the door. So think of your building, this historic buildings as have symbiotic relationship to a bigger environment, and use that as a cost model, because that symbiotic relationship within the streets and the retail and the activity around it is what makes the place. So I do think that was the kind of analysis we used in the Portland airport, but it is going to be, I think, the future of, in this case, the airport renovation in America. Most airports in America have been built in the 50s. They're coming of age. So this, normally what they would do is they would take it down, they would build on the side like they did in LaGuardia, because this is the first element of a solution of how you build over existing and then adding to it and keeping it safe. And I do think that is going to be really responsible, so you don't have to redo existing functioning stuff and put the money back in the architecture of the renovation that could be extended to create this romance, these sensual moments.
I think that it's great in your presentation, the way that you also showed how all of the architects, like how you guys also were making those decisions about who was going to be involved, what kind of seeing it not just as your project, but as like a larger community project. And like telling that side of the story that isn't always visible to the general public, I think is really powerful, and seeing these as truly public projects as well. I'm just looking at the time and figuring out how we can go. Maybe I'll do a rapid fire round of questions, that one for each of you that I'm going to pull. And I'm going to flip to Ben quickly. We had one person who wanted you to expand on the concept of radiant flooring in the project.
Okay, so there was originally a stone tile floor. Well, actually, there wasn't originally a stone tile floor. There was a slab. There have been different floor coverings. We took up the stone, which was there, and we wanted to take away a lot of the space usage of the overhead duct system. We put radiant heating and cooling pipes on the slab, and then we put a terrazzo over the top of that to kind of seal that water piping in. That helps to manage that space, which is, because it's a lobby, it has a kind of transient temperature range, and it's a much lower energy, uses much less air. It's a much cleaner design. Radiant cooling and heating is great.
Very succinctly put. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kirsten, your rapid fire question is going to be just very as cogently as possible. What was it's a tricky, but what was the design process like for different floor plans and townhomes? And like more specifically, were they driven by the developer, or were you kind of working with potential buyers in mind from the onset?
I'd say the process is iterative. We just tried to imagine. It wasn't highly scientific. Our developer was very involved and actually loved design and floor planning, and so we were very iterative. I think we were just always trying to take the best advantage that we could of the space that we had and the structure that we had. It evolved throughout the process. And the last thing I'll say is we like to think of all of our residential projects as continuing to be able to evolve in the future. So thinking about, we're still working on combining units, changing units with different buyers, et cetera. So that really strong structural language with a flexible systems language allows you to do that.
Thank you so much. It seemed like fun having all of the different kind of options as well, and not having to do just one kind of market that you're looking for. And I like how they're all unified with the entrance as well. Okay, and last question, Jean, we have someone who is asking very astutely, how does mass timber hold up to all of Oregon's rain? And also, what fireproofing methods were considered for the mass timber?
First, it's not all mass timber, it's all timber. Let's put that out. Mass timber is basically this word that we use for industrialized wood. So this is a combination of the, panels, glue lam, and stock sizes. We actually, it was a very intentional thing. One of the things that the beauty of harvesting wood in the region that you're going to use it is the wood in itself is adapted to the fungus, to the microorganism. So when you cut it, they tend to last longer. And second, because it was out in the weather for about 4 years, we worked with a local manufacturer and created a coating system that's all natural, with titanium dioxide, and used with the oils that are around the region that help protect it. So again, this idea of sustainability, of being regional, kind of like it's transcendental. It goes beyond cost to the sort of the preservation of the fibers. That makes sense?
It does to me, and I never thought about it that way, but the benefits of having the local wood being adapted. That's crazy, and yeah, something to look more into for sure. Thank you all so much. I wish that we had more time and could keep kind of going with this, but I encourage everyone to read more about these projects. I think that we've just scratched the surface here. Thank you, Ben, Kirsten, Jean, all for joining us today and for sharing and for preparing these presentations. Yeah, and congratulations on your A+ awards. We're looking forward to seeing the future adaptive reuse and renovation projects that your firms have in store. And I encourage everyone in our audience to look more into these projects and to keep an eye out for our email about A+ awards. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great project, guys.
Same.